All right, today we're going to look at narration and description. Now, in essence, what you're doing all in this first essay here is really just to tell a good story. And it's a good idea to, as Hemingway said, write about something that you know about. That's key. Because what narration actually means comes from the word naris, meaning to know or knowing. So you need to know the story, you need to describe the story. I love this. Tell me a fact and I'll learn. Tell me a truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. That's kind of your goal in this first essay here. Well, this page does go over, really just gives you a list of all the things you might want to find in an effective narration. One of those things is, of course, to use sensory detail, meaning appeals to touch, our senses of sight, hearing, taste, smell. It's like Chekhov said, "Don't tell me the moon is shining. Show me the glint of light on broken glass." There's a wonderful example here showing, not telling, and what exactly that is. But that's something that they've been hopefully drilling into your heads for many years. So if you want to review that, here it is. Okay, and these next few pages go over examples. Really just as many examples as I could come up with of, like it says here, writing about locations, places, people. There are a lot of fantastic examples in here that you should read. We're going to move ahead to 52. When we split the second is when we divide larger actions into smaller parts, literally taking the event apart second by second. The technique there is that you want to use as many descriptive verbs as you can in essentially what you might know as a list or parallel structure, or what you might also know in this case as coordination, using INGs like cavorting, spinning, spiraling, using different types of descriptive words that explain the motion in different ways. And when we split the second, here are some examples here from Fight Club. They used pass keys where they could and used spray canisters of Freon to shatter locked cylinders so they could dangle, repelling against the tower's brick facade, dropping, trusting each other to hold ropes, swinging, risking quick death. So there's a wonderful example of splitting the second. There are some other examples there. Enhancing is when instead of just saying like using one descriptive adjective in a situation, enhancing is about or encourages you to explore kind of a rainbow of different things that you see there. What are the different types of smells, different types of tastes, different types of sounds and sights and colors? So not just one, but like you would in this case, we see a whole lot of things, right? And next door, an art dealer displayed in his cluttered window a splendid, flamboyant, green, red, golden, and inky blue ancient American estampe, a locomotive with gigantic smokestack, great Baroque lamps. And that's an example of enhancing. And we see it here where in American Psycho, where Bret Easton Ellis is talking about the change in time and that correlating to the change in the color of the sky. You see this another example here from McCarthy's Blood Meridian. Just a lot of good detail there. And let's look at this example because this is unique, right? This is a distinctly different approach to the same type of technique. In Rebecca Solnit's A Field Guide for Getting Lost, she begins the chapter, "The Blue of Distance." The world is blue at its edges and in its depths. This blue is the light that got lost. The light at the blue end of the spectrum does not travel the whole distance, but the blue at the horizon, the blue of land that seems to be dissolving into the sky, is a deeper, dreamier, melancholy blue at the farthest reaches of the places where you could see for miles. So that's a different approach at enhancing. Then there's a technique called telescoping. When you telescope, you simply say you're writing a sentence, and at the end of the sentence where you'd normally put a period, you would put a comma in this case. And that would allow you to telescope, as it were, or give us more information about the very last thing in that sentence, right, that was right before the comma. Here's an example from Nabokov's The Gift. He was already looking for the creation of something new, comma, something still unknown. This is a good technique when you're transitioning from paragraph to paragraph. It's called shrink a century. It's when you're going to fast forward through less important parts of the story through language. In American Psycho, Bret Easton Ellis begins a chapter, May slides into June, which slides into July, which creeps toward August. And he literally, in the book, just skips those months. They were not important to the story as he was telling it, so he just skipped right past them. This one here, it only lasted 2 weeks from the day I bought her. That was a real quick movement past those 2 weeks in this essay by award-winning journalist Rick Bragg. It's a very good idea in any type of narrative descriptive piece to have what is called a working philosophy of life. Now, this is essentially just a perspective, right? What's your current perspective? Do you have any theories? Do you have any insights about life? Here's an example here from Fathers and Sons. This is from Bazarov's Fathers and Sons. You see what I'm doing? There seems to be an empty space in the box, and I'm putting hay in. That's how it is in the box of our life. We would stuff it up with anything rather than have a void. And that was one of the first expressions. That was by Turgenev, the character that says the line is Bazarov. That, of course, is the first expression of existentialism in literature, this idea of the void. Excuse me, this is a great one too, from McCarthy's All the Pretty Horses. At some point, we cannot escape naming responsibility. It's in our nature. Sometimes I think we are all like that myopic coiner at his press, taking the blind slugs one by one from the tray, all of us bent so jealously at our work, determined that not even chaos be outside of our making. So there are numerous examples of that. Catharsis is a wonderful thing to have in a narrative or descriptive piece of writing. It is basically a moment of realization that can happen usually later in a story. Or as it states here, intellectual clarification. Great example of it is the end of The Usual Suspects. And I can't spoil it because as a cinephile, someone who likes film, I can't spoil it. That's one of the classic crime dramas of all time. So watch the movie. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, maybe check it out if you have the time. But there's a great. Oh, I'm confusing the two. I didn't mean to say it was part of catharsis, although it is similar. Epiphany. Oh, I was confusing the two. The epiphany is that moment of realization. Catharsis is a cleansing that leads to an emotional rejuvenation. So that's more of like an emotional cleanse. Epiphany is more like an intellectual realization. Yeah. All right. And then we look at Hemingway. He gives us three techniques here to add description to our writing: offer concrete details, make comparisons, name the experience. Be specific, and as he says here, use evaluative adjectives and adverbs. He gives you the 5-finger exercise. I have another exercise here that I put together, but it's a little grammar heavy, so you have to learn restrictive clauses before that really makes a lot of sense. To write a limerick is the extra credit here. For essay 1, it is simply to write a poem. A limerick is a short, funny poem about the topic of essay 1. And now let's look at organization, like how you might put this together. A story is not like an essay, right? A story is different than an essay. You can use this as a general model for a story, although it doesn't really work for an essay. Usually begins with a conflict, traditionally, rising action, a climax, falling action or consequences, and a resolution, or a return to a status quo. So if we're thinking of this as a normal essay, we can kind of bend it and say that this is sort of the shape that it would take if it were a narrative descriptive essay. Some good things to keep in mind is that a good story does take about a day to tell. There are a lot of examples from Night of the Living Dead, Groundhog Day, Clerks. Four Christmases is a funny example. If you've seen that one, Ferris Bueller's Day Off is another. You have good narrative stories that occur in about a weekend, and many, many more that are kind of one-day affairs, including Blade Runner, Ulysses. There's not much time left. I think we can get to this part here. Another good thing to have in a narrative descriptive essay are calendar clock time transitions and temporal transitions. So basically bigger and smaller transitions. The bigger transitions, calendar clock time, these usually occur at the beginning of each paragraph in each topic sentence. And these would be references to years, months, dates, days, time, basically, helping the audience understand where we are in the story as far as time goes. And then in the middle of the paragraphs, you want to use what are called temporal transitions. Temporal transitions are things you use in sentences, and these are words like when and at the moment, before. And temporal transitions, the purpose of them is to help keep the audience on track in terms of understanding cause and effect, or the events that occur in a given sentence. And there are numerous examples here. Verb tense, which we'll, for the moment, skip aside. This looks pretty good, though. All right, so we've gotten to a lot of things here. Let's call that narration part 1, and then we'll pick up around here with part 2. Thank you.